Alright, I am here today to talk to you about provisional cast on using scrap yarn, of course, and a crochet hook. Remember, mirror knitter, so some of this is going to be really backwards because I'm also a right-handed crocheter. So I have my crochet hook here. I actually have two. That is because this one has numbers on it. You can see that there's something written there. There we go. You can kind of read it. This one just has the letter on it because it's older. The reason why the numbers count is because I like to find a crochet hook that is a bit bigger in diameter or circumference, whichever you want to pick, than my knitting needle. And this knitting needle is a size 3. This crochet hook is a G, which means I think it's about a 7. But it doesn't have the 7 on it, but this I does have its number on it. It's a 9. I don't know if you can see that right there. So I have my crochet hook. I have my US size 3 needles. I have my scrap yarn. And then I have my working yarn here, which is fingering weight. There are a couple ways you can do this. Start with your slip knot. You can just simply make a chain and make the number of chains that you need of stitches to cast on. So for this, I have to cast on 49 if I remember correctly. So I would make 49 chains. And then make a few extra, just because maybe you have to skip one because it's tight to get into or something of that nature. And because it's a provisional cast on and will be pulled out later, it doesn't matter if you have to skip one or two because you don't like the way it looks or you just can't find the loop that you need. That's fine. So just make sure you have some extras. So we're going to pretend that I'm done. And you would break the loop, but I'm not going to do that so that I can reuse this yarn. You would break it here, pull the working yarn out, and pull the other end tight so that it would then not come undone. We are finished with the crochet hook now. I will show you a second way to do that in just a moment. So this is the front side of the chain that looks nice and pretty and has these V's going on. This is the back side of the chain. On the back side are these loops. And these are actually what we're going to be picking up and working into. And this is where things are going to get weird because I'm going to come down here and pick up and work this way because I'm a mirror knitter. So I'm going to get my working yarn. Get your knitting needles ready. And I have just picked up, it's this back guy right here, the chain bump. And I'm just going to knit. Don't want to twist this stitch at all. Just going to knit into it. Pick up the next one. And knit into it. And then the next one. And this is where we're one of those moments, if you're not completely sure, is it this one or is it this one? You can skip because it's not going to matter later. This is why you made a few extra to begin with, in case you needed them. You're just going to do that all the way down the chain. As you see, I also used a larger yarn, larger weight yarn. I just like to do that because then I can see it. In case I put the project down for a while, I will remember, no problem, that that is a provisional cast on. Because not only is it a different color, it is a different weight. It does not affect the stitches when you pull the provisional cast on out and go to complete your seam or pick up and put on an edging, or for whatever reason you're doing a provisional cast on. It has not affected the size of my stitches, this yarn that I use. All right, and then when you have the correct number of stitches now picked up from your chain bumps, you just leave the rest of those chains to hang. And you're ready to move on. So this is what the front of mine looks like. And this is what the back looks like. I'm going to pause it here and knit another row. Okay, I have knit a few more rows. And let's pretend we're done. Now it's time to pull this provisional cast on out. You will have cut yours. So you'll have a tail hanging, and you will need to undo the knot here so that you can pull this thread. And I will do some more video when I actually finish this real piece. It's going to be a cowl, and show more detail about ripping it out. I'm just going to do real basic right now, just so you can get the idea. So your tail, because mine's still attached to the ball, you would just pull through here, take your other knitting needle, and pick up, because this is one of your stitches, you don't want to lose it. And then this is a stitch, and sorry. Just the thing about using wool, it sticks, which is nice because then your stitches don't just fall all over the place. Then you pick up the next stitch. So I'm just going to hold it. I'm not going to pick up each stitch. I just want you to see how it unzips. And the stitches just become available for you to pick up. Then you can knit into them. Just be sure to be ready to put them on something. Do this at a point in time when you're not going to be interrupted. I split that one. Just put them on the needle, and then they're ready for you to work for, like I said, for grafting, or for whatever it is the pattern is going to have you to do next. The unzipping will look much better in the next video. This was more about how to get it on the needle. Speaking of, I said there was another way to do that. Let me get this all ripped out real quick. All right, we don't need the working yarn. We only need the provisional yarn. Put that over there. Need your crochet hook again. You start with that same slip knot. And this time, okay, so slip knot, crochet hook, knitting needle. The yarn is behind the knitting needle. I'm just going to chain over the needle. Take the yarn back behind the needle, chain again. Back behind the needle, chain again. Back behind, chain again. You saw me split that yarn. Make sure and use a crochet hook that, while it is a little bit bigger than your knitting needle, if you're using a different weight yarn, make sure you have a crochet hook that is appropriate to the weight of yarn as well. If you're splitting it a lot, you will probably need to go up a couple sizes. All right, let's say, okay, I have everybody on my needle that I need. Everything is now behind the needle, and we're just going to make a few more chains. And leaves those guys off. Mirror knitter situation again. I'm going to work in the back loop this time. Sorry, right-handed people, I don't yet know how to help you, but I will work on that. The reason I'm working in the back loop is because if I go in the front, it's going to twist and it's not going to come undone. And I'm going to have to sit and pick them all out. So we go in the back loop, just a leg that presents itself first. See, the front loop's going to just totally twist what's going on here, and so it will not come undone. But these are the same chain bumps that were picked up earlier. I don't think one is any faster than the other. Honestly, I've done them both. I've been using the crochet hook over the knitting needles as an actual cast-on method for quite a while, and I've gotten pretty quick at it. But for the provisional, having to go back and pick up, I'm not sure which one would be any faster than the other. So this is the front, and this is the back. It's the same as the other one. You kind of just skip a step. You don't have to pick up those chain bumps. But if you did, and that is going to be the problem. I have a few extra chains here, but I can't use them. I would have to rip back out to be able to use them. So with this way, you've got to cast on the right number the first time. Okay, I have found a way that if you put the provisional cast on onto your knitting needle, but you have these extra stitches, that you can use them. Remember, the extra stitches were instructed to be there just to give you some space, a little bit more tail to work with, so you don't have to worry about that stitch falling out if something were to fall off the needle, things of that nature. Okay, so I put the stitches on the needle, and then I knit them back, as you saw in the last segment. But remember, I told you to leave a really long tail. So here's that tail. Here's that tail. I have 10 stitches on the needle. Well, let's say I needed 12. So I don't have any more down here to work with. We're going to slip everybody back. All right. Now, so I've got them all slipped back. Here's my tail. Here's my extra chains. We want to work in that back bump like we did before, when they were just made into a chain and then picked up. So you can do that now. Kind of look at it, figure out which way it needs to go on the needle. If you feel you have to mount it on the needle, you do not have to. If you're comfortable just doing it this way, and then mounting the new stitch on the needle, that is completely acceptable. So that made an 11, and I wanted to do 12. So we're going to pick up this next bump right here, put the yarn over right here, take that bump over and off the needle, and then transfer the stitch. I now have my 12 stitches. These last two are the same orientation as these other guys. Except that one. I twisted that one at some point. Okay. So that is how you can use those chains at the beginning. So if for some reason you have to provisionally cast on an insane number, like 300 or something, which I do have a project where I did do that, I would, cast on the 300 and something, and then probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 extra. I'd rather have more extra stitches down here and not need them, instead of needing 16 but only having 14 or 15 or something. I think yes, there's a cutoff line where you would just have to suck it up and deal, but yeah. Remember, we have extra stitches, so in case something was too tight, you couldn't get into it, you just couldn't find it, which there's going to be less of that when they're cast on with the crochet hook right onto the needle than when they're just chained. But that is how you can use those stitches that are left at the tail, provisional tail end, when you put them straight onto the needle with the hook. Okay, I worked on it. I'm pretty sure I've got it figured out for right-handed, aka normal knitters, instead of me and my mirror knitter self. So I have put the stitches on the knitting needle using the crochet hook as I demonstrated earlier. This time I'm using the same weight yarn, very different colors. Obviously, one's this blue and one's this yellow. I'm going to leave a longer tail this time. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Okay. So remember, I worked in the back loop. So right-handed normal knitters are going to work in the front loop as if they're normally knitting. Please forgive me if I am wrapping the yarn around the needle incorrectly. The only time that I knit right-handed is when I combination knit or Portuguese style. So I'm not sure which way the yarn is supposed to go. Normally, please wrap the yarn around the needle the way you normally would as a right-handed knitter. So I am just going into the front of each of these loops, just as if it were the first row or any other regular cast on, and I'm just knitting across these 10 stitches. That last guy there. So here's the front. Here's the back. And then I'm going to knit a couple more rows and we're going to unbutton the bottom and see what happens. All right, I have worked a few more rows now. So let's see how this goes. All right, here's where I picked up from the chain. Honestly, it looks a little bit more graceful for right-handers. It might also be because it's worsted weight yarn and I've only ever done a provisional with fingering weight. There you have it. The unzipping of a provisional cast on. Thank you for joining me in Azariah Studio. Happy making!